1-0.
George Riley.
Yeah, I'm here. How are you?
Yeah, very good.
Pretty good. Let me... Hold on. We're going to jack up the volume. All right, now good. Oh, suck. Wait, hold on. Oh, freak. I had something else on. Okay, so there you go. I'm good now.
We're good now. All right, good. Yeah, well, thanks for having this chat with me, George. I think I'll just start with our peculiar title, 1.9685 versus infinity, because we've been talking about.
Well, it's actually 1968. That was when they were like the year before they were going to go to the moon. And if you remember Toy Story, he goes to infinity and beyond, right? That's what it's about, right?
Well, no. You crunch the numbers. You're good at it, but I think 1.9. That's the
685. Yeah.
Let's explain what it is first. So there's a number there versus affinity, and we've been talking about various classic arcade game world records, and are they using this sort of Orwellian double speak of Animal Farm, like are some world records more equal than others? You know, which is just a strange way of putting it, but they're all equal in the sense that you've got a world record, but where they measured today, you know.
Yeah.
So the 1.9 comes from the long jump world record by
Bob Beamon from the Mexico Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, his world record was beaten by Mike Powell in 1991.
Yeah.
And the difference was, and I'll put it in feet since our audience is largely probably in the US, but so Beamon jumped 29 feet and 2.5 inches, whereas Powell jumped 29 feet and 4.25 inches. And I think that is the measurement there of difference, is 1.9 inch of a difference. Is what
yeah.
And the date between them was 1968 to 1991. So I just thought that was a good illustration of a world record that is, I think, and then we can get straight into video games. I think that record is kind of where Donkey Kong's headed.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong, you know. So you can see in that, like Donkey Kong, long jump can't exponentially go up and up. We're not going to have people jumping, 60 feet. We're not going to have people jumping.
No.
It's got to where it is, and someone under the right conditions and the right strength may break that world record. It'd be exciting if they did, but it's not going to be by massive difference. It's not. We're already talking less than 2 inches, and that's not to take away from them. But I looked it up, and like Powell said that when he met Beamon, he said it was like a weight lifted off his shoulder. He'd been carrying this world record around for years, and it was kind of, he felt apparently quite glad. And when they ended up just talking about jazz music and stuff. But there was this kind of like, oh, good, it's finally broken. I don't have to. He was kind of glad it was gone in a way. And that's the impression you get when you read about it. But anyway, the Donkey Kong one is certainly like the long jump world record. Wouldn't you agree? It's got a finite distance.
Well, yeah. There's for instance, I think the high score is 1,249,000 something hundred, and now only 50,000 more points would be 1.3 million, and that's, if you think about it, that's less than 4% of where 4% increase. And so, like you said, that 1.96 inches is almost sort of like that, in that there's a 4% increase. That's all. But if you talk to people, and they'll say 1.3 million is like the ultimate score. Like, everything has to go right. You have to have every single man. I mean, you have to have what they call the RNG, the random number generator, just go, just perfect. You have to have like Vegas luck in order to get that 1.3 million, plus a whole bunch of skill where you're just super aggressive. So even though it's only 50,000 more points, those 50,000 more points are thought of as like an insane goal to reach. So you're right, we are almost to the point where it's becoming, where it's getting maxed out, I guess you would call it, or it'll never truly get maxed out because you can always go slightly higher no matter what, but it's close.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting to the point where when it does go, even with McCurdy's, which is what was it, 1,000, what was it, 1,700 points, something like that. It was around that
Yeah.
area where you lift it by, which it's huge when you think about where Donkey Kong's at. But when you look at the, you know, what's on top of, like when you look at where the score, they're almost identical. Like Robbie Lakeman's and his score, it's like you said, the random number generator might have fallen a bit in his favour. But then again, that game of McCurdy's had a very poor start.
Yeah.
Had to play better. Like there's lots of ways of retrospectively looking at all of this, saying, "Oh, if only, if only," and there's no two ways about it. To get those scores takes, you know, I don't know where we pull these numbers from, but it's 90-something% skill. You know, like it's
Yes.
the vast bulk of skill, and there is a little bit of luck just
Yeah.
to go your way. And the same with the long jump, you just might be on that day, just some little thing, you know, whatever it is, lifts you further. And of course, we're looking at the difference here. We're looking at world records, not tournaments. Whereas when we look at something like an Olympic event, regardless of breaking a world record, if you're the fastest on the day, you still get a gold. So the Olympics isn't about world record. They may be broken there, but that's not its pure function. It's about who's the best player in this Olympic at whatever event. So we can, Donkey Kong will, you know, even with the world record reaching the point where it is now, where it can getting harder to beat. You just saw it come off where, you know, the number 2 player, well, Leighton went in as the number 1 player in the world and came out number 2 because McCurdy broke it during the Kong.
Oh, yes.
But Leighton still didn't win the Kong off. And that's not being rude to Robbie, that's just how it goes. Like, it's very different world records for tournaments. So, but the interesting about, I wanted to ask you about this is where we want to get into the, what does all this mean when we look at the Donkey Kong leaderboard on the Donkey Kong forum? I think it's probably the most, because we can include name in that and we get or we can look at Twin Galaxies. Either way, we've got a really dense leaderboard, which no other arcade track has, to my knowledge. Like this has become so highly competed on in the last, I suppose it really kicked off after, you know, King of Kong. So, you know, 2000 well, I suppose you could say it began in 2000 when Billy Mitchell's world record was then broken. It's taken the better part of 2 decades to get where we're at, and it's slowly running out of steam. But we were talking about it the other day. When we look at this and start comparing it to other leaderboards, because it's so competed on, how do other scores match up to it?
Yeah.
That's
true.
We evaluate these together. Like, how do we look at world records?
Oh, yeah.
In compared to Donkey Kong?
Well, one theory I'd like to give you right now about sort of what I hope it means. Because Donkey Kong's not my main game as far as the Donkey Kong series. It's Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong 3. Wishful thinking, I hope it's sort of like, if you ever know about how population spreads out, first you have the urban center, and then it spreads out to the suburban area, and then eventually the country area gets populated. So my hope is people will be like, you know what, this score is insane, even the top 10 is insane. How about I just try Donkey Kong Jr. instead? And then people will start playing Donkey Kong Jr., and maybe they'll go to Donkey Kong 3, because Donkey Kong 3 is sort of out in the country when it comes to this population distribution, or either that, or they're just going to say, you know what, forget it. You know, I like Donkey Kong, but I don't like these other games. I'm not going to... I would hope, my hope is they spread out to other games. Because, like the 10th place score, I truly believe is better than 98% of arcade scores, because a lot of these arcade scores are not heavily competed against. And you don't see people playing day after day, and you don't see them playing for thousands of hours. If there's a few exceptions like Frogger and maybe Dig Dug or something like that, but for the most part, no. Most of these arcade games don't have the same amount of competition. Galaga, though. Galaga's increasing greatly as far as competition in the past few months. I guess you could talk about that.
Yeah, I think, like Donkey Kong, I think we can see its trajectory where it began, where it's at now, where it all began. Like King of Kong certainly lifted it. Now, if you look through the leaderboard on Donkey Kong, There was no scores going in the 90s. A score went in 2000, and then Steve Weeby, and then it just sort of just got momentum after the King of Kong. People thought, I want to be a part of that. They remembered it was probably children or teenagers, and they thought, great, I like that game. Well, some probably weren't even familiar with it. Younger people like Vincent LeMay, who turned his attention to it, was probably largely to do with the film. He just thought, wow, what an exciting subculture. I want to be a part of that. Who knows? But it did give a focus. It drew people's focus to this game because of it just went out to the
Well,
popular.
don't forget about, before Steve Wiebe and Billy Mitchell, don't forget about Tim Zerbe, who was the very first person to beat Billy Mitchell's record. And so that definitely needs to be acknowledged.
I just mentioned the year. He did
Yeah.
that in 2000.
Oh, yeah.
So
Gotcha.
Tim Zerbe took that in 2000. Sorry, I meant to say Tim Zerbe. So Tim Zerbe took that in 2000, and then
Yeah.
Billy came in around 2000. And I think maybe it was, I can't remember exactly the date, it was like 2005 or 6. It was, obviously, they were doing the Commonwealth film. And then it was a bit of changing hands back and forth. And then I think it'd be accurate to say that Hank Chan came in and just dominated it on the arcade, and Dean Sagler dominated on the main.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just a lot of swapping between Robbie and Wes, and where we are now. And then there's the Commonwealths that grew out of that. And I think that, to go back to Gallagher, I think that, and I have to talk about myself here, just as I should say when you're the current Donkey Kong 3 world record holder.
At the moment, yes. Until Andrew Barra beats me.
Yeah. And I think, and I've got to go back 10 years now when I took the world record on Gallagher. And the scene then was Andrew Laidlaw had a score of 2.7 million up on the 5-man only track, the tournament track. And that was a solid score, and it is still a very solid score. A lot of people can't get 100,000 points, even on factory settings.
Yeah.
But there were only about 4 people on the leaderboard, maybe as little as 3. I think it might have only been 3 then. So when I put mine up, I was the fourth score up. Now, there was much more on the marathon one, but those scores were so high and distant that people were just, and it's a different style of game. Now, my score sat there at number 1 until 2011, and Laidlaw took it back. And then it sat there until just last year. So years went by, and Score Wars, as we know, Score Wars at Meow Wolf and Santa Fe certainly drew attention. And then prior to Score Wars, I and John Klinkle decided to form Galaga Forum. He's now the administrator. I've stepped away from it, not for any ill reason. I just felt that they could just continue on, and I'll do other things. But in that time, so Mike Thompson now has the world record that was broken this year. Armando Gonzalez took the world record last year. So we're going through a list from top to bottom. So Mike Thompson's at number 1. That's 2019. Armando Gonzalez last year, 2018. Then Jordan Dorrington, he's got the 3rd highest score, and that's this year, 2019. Now, when you look at Gallagher, there's probably only, my assessment, there's only really 5 active competitors in Gallagher, which is Thompson, in no particular order, Thompson, Gonzalez, Dorrington, Stephen Krogman, and Andrew Barrow. Now, that's not into, they're all 5 million plus point players, and 4 of them are 6 million plus point players. But when you get down beneath that, you find solid scores but inactive players like Andrew Laidlaw. We have a score from 2011. So that's, 8 years has now passed and he hasn't submitted another score. Now, he may not be competing. Mine is the most, one's from last decade, 2009, and I haven't competed since, except for Score Wars, which was not quite the same, I guess. And then we've got 2 scores of more recent, like a 2.4 and a 2.2. So Mark Schultz at 2.4 and John Klinkle at 2.2. Now, I think John Klinkle's a stronger player than that, but that score's from last year. So it's hard to know where they're really at. So I think it's fair to say of all the list of 100 players on the Galaga Forum, because they only track the top 100, there's only really 5 competitive players who are active. Whereas Donkey Kong, it seems to me, and this is what I want to ask you about, it does have competitive activities that are outside of chasing the world record. You've got people who just want to be in the top 10. There's benchmarks of kill screens and 1 million point scores and things like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. For whatever reason, 1.1 million, which is far off from the record, has a lot of prestige. So does even getting into the top 10 for Donkey Kong. So does even getting 1 million for Donkey Kong. And even the kill screen has a lot of, that's like a way to go type of thing. And so maybe the reason why the kill screen is so popular is because, the movie sort of made such much ado about the kill screen, about like, oh, how it's so rare that people get a kill screen. And now, of course, almost over a decade later, over 12 years later, 14 years later, it's completely changed. It's now it's like a common occurrence, but there's still this desire to get to be like, Steve Wiebe or Billy Mitchell and get that kill screen, just to say, hey, I can do it too.
Well, it is like a kill screen club. It's sort of it's like few when you look at the amount of competitors. I think there's about 80 plus kill screens.
Yeah,
now
it's a lot.
And they track about 500 scores. So it sort of starts to show that the kill screen, and not taking anything away from any Donkey Kong players out there, but with almost 20% of the leaderboard, then because I think they track the top 500. I'm correct, aren't they? They Donkey Kong Forum track.
Oh, it's more than the top 500. It's not top 500 just yet, but they've got like 400, I think 80 something scores. Maybe it's over 500 now, but
let's say it's roughly 500.
Yeah.
So they've got 500 points, 500 track scores, like 500 scores they've verified.
Yeah.
And 20% of them are basically kill screens. It does start to show something about, like you were talking about your suburban sprawl idea in a way. It's sort of similar, like that. Once someone does something, it paves the way to show it's possible, and people can sort of learn from that. Especially now with the internet, you can watch other like Twitch and YouTube clips and things like that. Like when I was playing in 2009, there was none of that. There was nothing around like for Galaga. I went in thinking to try and go for the world record with a single ship. I thought maybe, I didn't test that idea for long, but I did try with it for a while. But now you can actually learn from other players and observe their behaviour. There's a lot of stats around this, so the kill screeners still takes a lot of skill. I'm not saying that, but there are aspects of it now that have become a little bit more academic. You can actually study this and learn stuff like clearly steering the barrels, don't pick up the bottom hammer, the weave pattern on the rivets, not for the star. I think the stars become more popular or more common.
Yeah.
The Weeby freebie on the Pie Factory, like how to do it.
And don't get 16th by having the barrel drop on your head when he does like the wild barrel level 5 and up. So there's that too.
Yeah, there's these sort of safe spots. It's very analysed. So therefore, it's paving the way for people to achieve these sort of goals. But it's still but also on top of that, there's people who are going to push higher. So when you look at the Galaga score, like, and this is where we're sort of getting to the idea of trying to assess these. If we have to compare the leaderboard of Galaga to something like Donkey Kong, the amount of competition, which is undeniable on Donkey Kong, there's nothing comes close on the leaderboard.
No.
There's nothing. And one of the closer ones, I think, is actually Galaga at the moment. It's got recent scores going up. But when you look at it, there's only 5 people who are above 5 million points, and only 5 people who are genuinely active players who are a threat to the score. Like Jordan Dorrington, the way he's going, within 12 months, he's gone from a 500,000 point player to a 5 million plus player. Now, so you look at that, if he keeps going, it seems very plausible he's going to hit 6 million plus.
Wait, Jordan's hit 5 million now? He was just at 4 million just like a week or two ago, I think, wasn't he?
No, Jordan's he's 5 million plus.
Oh, wow. So he even jacked it up a little more. Wow, okay.
So like you can see the acceleration of some of these players, whereas someone like Mark Schultz, for instance, 2.4, which is a really good score. I'm not taking it away from him, but he's been playing for quite a while. So even as he improves, then the people above him are going to improve. He has to do a lot of improving to actually get this. He's not. If you look at it from the point of an economic point of view, the inflation rate is going faster than his pay.
Oh yeah, that is kind of yeah. I had the same thing with Donkey Kong where I was like, I think there was a time when I had an 850,000 score back in 2013. I think I was in the like 52nd or something, and now I have a score that's like 877,000, and it's now like I think 77th place. So I've actually gone down 25 spots despite the fact I actually upped the score by like 26,000 points. So yeah, I know exactly this inflation thing. So.
And that's right. When you look at the top scores in Dogma, like the top 10 scores are all 1.1 million plus, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. To get to the top 10, I think you need 1.13 something and up.
So therefore, the top 20 are going to be all million-point scores. You know, like you're going to have to go a long way down before you get, you know, in. And then it's very competitive to get into the top 20. You know, you just don't. Like it is a real goal to crack 1 million, which Alan Stall's been chasing for a long time.
Yeah.
And he falls short by very few points. And he's a guy who I think the Donkey Kong community realises he's probably played more games of Donkey Kong than anyone.
No one has played more than him. No one.
But there's some strategy in there or changing of tactics that may need to be looked at. But if we look at another game, and I think a good one to look at, and because I wrote about it recently, but the Space Invaders game, which is our oldest game, we could probably look at in its published date, 1978. So John Tannehill's score. Well, actually, I work from the bottom up here. So the number 5 slot on Twin Galaxies is a guy by the name of Wood from 2003. So that's not that long ago compared to the year it was released. And we have 28,000 points. So he's rolled it nearly 3 times.
Yeah.
He's rolled it. Yeah. Yet when we look at the world record at first place, they're only going from 5th position to first. John Tannehill's score is 218,000. Yeah. I'm not taking anything away from Wood. Like, I can't roll Space Invaders, but
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm losing you, man. Well, it's really garbled big time right now, so patience. Maybe you gotta move your phone somewhere else. I don't know. Yeah, there, I hear you. You're good now.
Yeah, it might have just been interference. So I'll just go back to what I was saying. Looking at the Space Invaders' top 5 scores, there's a guy by the name of Wood who has a score of 28,000 points. And that was very high in 2003. And so he's rolled the score twice, almost 3 times. And that's, if you saw someone play Space Invaders like that in an arcade, you go, wow, that guy can really play. And he can really play. But when you look at the world record by John Tannehill from last year, January last year, it's 218,000. So now let's look at these 5 scores and think about where the competition lies. Now, Richie Knuckles has a score of 184,000.
Which is very good. Amazing, yes.
Yeah, it was a great score. That's from 2011, though. That's the same as Andrew Laidlaw's. Gallagher, it's the same year. So how active is Richie Knuckles on Space Invaders at the moment? Now, to be fair, the record was only broken last year, so he hasn't had to do anything about the score at the moment.
Okay.
So whereas the third highest score, one of the top gamers of all time, yet to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that should be corrected soon, so we all know who we're talking about, Donald Hayes. He has a score of 55,000 from 2003. Now, it seems to suggest that Donald Hayes isn't playing Space Invaders there. So, really, the competition could be just between 2 people. It could just be, seems to me the only...
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of MAME scores, I think, that are fairly high as well from MARP. And MAME Space Invaders does play very similar to arcade Space Invaders, I think so. Maybe there's a few that if they just had access to Space Invaders would do a lot better.
Yeah. But the interesting about it, that game talks about the popularity of competing on Donkey Kong, because people will go to great lengths to get a Donkey Kong to compete on an arcade cabinet. And the Donkey Kong community is pretty obsessive about things being built on a Donkey Kong machine, and so it's not drawing that attention. Clearly, the arcade track isn't drawing that attention. So when we look at this, there is without a doubt that the top 5 players can play Space Invader very well, and the top 2, particularly, they've reached a level of mastery beyond most. But what's the future for Space Invaders? Like, it's unlikely we're ever going to see the level of competition that we're going to see on Donkey Kong for Space Invaders, just by the sheer nature of the game.
I think it's just, like you said, the nature of the game. It's just a very, very, it is a super repetitive game when you play it at the top level. There's just a certain way where you go boom, 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 then you go back, boom, 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 boom. And then I think every 12 shots or something, and then you have to intensely count the shots or something. Boom, 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 boom. And then you see the UFO will come out every 12 or 15 shots, whatever it is. and it'll come out, and then you shoot it, and then you go back, boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom, until the freaking UFO shows up again, and it's the same thing. And so it's a very repetitive game. There's not to take away from the amazing amount of focus and skill with this game, which I think is still truly amazing because your rhythm has to be perfect, and you just have to have perfect aim. So it's not the easiest thing to pull off. So yeah, I have great respect for it. But it is a very, very monotonous, repetitive game. And I can understand why some people are just why it doesn't get the attention from competitive gamers is just because of the monotony of it all. So
Yeah, John Tannehill would certainly agree. Like and what George was describing there is the boom, boom, boom is what's called death row, or it's also known as the wall of death. Where they allow the invaders to get right down the bottom where they can't drop a bomb, and then quickly scoot along the bottom and shoot them all off. But Tannehill will go into great detail about this, of just how monotonous and boring to do, like the counting, the concentration. So he said you can't actually hold a conversation. You can answer a very simple question, but I think that requires more thought that could throw your counting off. Will just cost you points. And already that game, I think it's I'm going to get this wrong. It's either 2 or 4 hour length game. So either way, it's just a long time to be sitting there doing something very repetitive and very difficult. And he was a state rower. And he knows, and like rowing, in a team of 8 or team of 4 or a team of 8, and just how repetitive that is. And he said it's the mental equivalent, he found, just the grueling kind of repetition of just pushing your mind to a place that's just not natural. But when we look at these two scores, and this is where we get our title from, where we look at Donkey Kong, which is very much the 1.9 inches. That's where we're getting at. People just trying to jump that. First of all, you've got to be able to jump for the long jump record. You've got to jump 29 feet already. If you can't reach 29 feet, you won't get in the world record. But you've got to jump that little bit more.
Yeah.
You've got to jump like maybe 6 inches now. That'll assure you the world record. So 29 and a half feet will get you the world record. Whereas in Space Invaders, we've got the infinity score, like Gallagher's an infinity score. It will go up forever, and it's harder to assess it. Where's the upper limit? Where does this all begin to end? And how do we compare these scores? How do we compare shot put to long jump? How do we compare long jump to a marathon run? How do we compare a 100-meter sprint to and that's what we're trying to talk about, aren't we? Like, how do we compare the world records?
Well, a lot of these records haven't been. The way I compare it is the only way I can figure out a way to compare it is to go with Donkey Kong and ask myself, okay, Billy Mitchell had what was thought of as this great score, which was 873,000 points, and then became the competition where Billy Mitchell and Steve Wiebe competed till he hit 1.05 million. Now that's where I think a lot of arcade scores are between. Actually, I think a lot of our arcade records are between what would be considered 500K for Donkey Kong and 1.05 million for Donkey Kong. I think very, very few games, because of the lack of competition, ever gets higher in relation than what would be a 1.05 million Donkey Kong game, because it's once you get the record, almost everybody most people go I've got the record now, that's it. What's the point? And they just wait till someone else breaks it, and that could be years and years and years. Not many people say, okay, I've got the record, now I'm going to really, really play the daylights out of this game and just take it to another level. Not many people will do that. And so there are some exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, it's okay, I got the record, that's what I wanted, and they walk away from the game. And so there's no more building of skill level because there's no one pressuring them to get to another level. And sort of like the late Joel West said, as iron sharpens iron, so does... forgot how it goes. But yeah, it's basically iron sharpening iron with most of these players. And that's why Donkey Kong has risen to a high level, is because you had you had Billy Mitchell and you had Steve Wiebe, and then you had Hank Chen and you had Dean Seglio, and then after that you had Weston Robbie, and then now the new guy John McCurdy. So it's this competition between these two people that's where both people will not be denied, and they're both saying no, I will not back down, and they just go at it for a very, very long time. That's how you get great scores. For the most part, is you have this insane competition between two people with very, very strong willpowers. So most arcade games don't have that. I think like I said, there are a few exceptions to the rule, but most arcade scores are not as high as people make them out to be, at least in my mind. I think Galaga's, like you said, is turning into that, I'm going to beat your score after, there are some competitive players now who are going back and forth, which is making the Galaga 5-man at least very, very, very competitive. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's true, like what Joel West said when it comes to, and I think he made that comment in Galloping Ghost. And he's, I think it's iron sharpen irons, so one man sharpens another. Or
exactly, something to that. Yeah, it works to that effect.
But I think that, and it's true. Like I think the problem with and just going back to Gallagher quickly, there was when Andrew Laidlaw took or does take, or he certainly did then, Gallagher very seriously, which is why he put a very solid score up. 2.7 million was a very solid score.
Yeah.
And I took it seriously to beat. And the unfortunate thing for Andrew is that after I got the world record, I sold my cabinet and I felt that was fun, but I had no desire to do it twice. Had he got a better sparring partner, which he's really wanted, then he would have got we got 4.5, and if I was much keener, I would have been chasing that. Maybe I would have broken it, maybe I never would have broken it, but I would have been pushing more. And had I broken it, he would have come back earlier. But what's happened is his score sat there since 2011. He didn't have any need to top it up, like you said. And since last year, 7 years passed, and your skills do, like anything, will start to fade if you don't exercise them. And now he's got to try and build, he's got to get his skills back to reach 4.5 at least, and then build on top of that. And the score is it's effectively at 7 million at the moment. Now, he may already have passed it and waiting to submit, who knows? But until we do know, there's no score coming through yet. There's no score that's come through yet. I think it's absolutely true. So when we look at a score like Richie Knuckles' score, he only had to beat 55,000K in 2003, but he destroyed it with 184. So it was this enormous leap, and people just said, I'm not going for it. And then Tannehill, convincingly beat, Richie Knuckles' score of 218. But it hasn't drawn other players in yet. And I think sometimes scores can get so big, and this is what happened to the original Billy Mitchell kill screen, people just felt it was beyond their ability and just didn't bother until something is shown how to get through this and there's some real desire to try and beat it. So until they're really competed on, it's very hard to sort of we have a very clear idea of where the skill set should be for Donkey Kong, because we know what it is. But in Galaga, we certainly know that former world record holders like myself are nowhere near the level of skill and expertise of new players today. You have to have a very skill set. And that may come the case if it keeps going the way it's going. We might find that a 10 million point score is where it begins. Who knows where Gallagher's going to go? Because one of those infinity scores, it's very hard to measure, but we just don't have enough data to sort of measure it, like you're saying. But then there's the other thing, though, and this is the other thing that's very different with Donkey Kong and certain other games, is there's certain pattern behaviour that does make Donkey Kong. I'm not going to be very careful how I say this, because I don't want to say it's an easy game. It's not an easy game, but there are stages where it is so rote learned, that there aren't that many surprises. You can accidentally get something, but like for instance the elevators. It is a very systematic. It's almost, you could watch anyone play the elevators, you're not going to see much different happen. You wouldn't be able to pick one person playing the elevators against another. They look the same.
Well, the top players go for that. There's 2 prizes in the very beginning, which, most moderate players will go for. After that, there is this third prize, though, on the very right-hand side of the screen. In order to get past, but you have to get past these quick elevator springs, which go really, really quick, and so you have to just time it just right. If you don't time it right, and if you don't look at the springs just right, you will be hit by a spring. And so if you want to know what at least with that, the difference between top players and moderate players is who goes after that third prize, and it's going to be people probably that have 1.05 million or 1 million or higher, basically. Yeah. I'm not saying top players, but you're not going to find that from kill screen players, and so. No. There is a little bit of a difference. People don't usually go after that because the reward is so low. We're talking about maybe 500 extra points, maybe even 400 extra points. But if you multiply that out by 17, that's like 6,800. What's like 7,000? Basically, you're talking about getting 7,000 extra points for the game. But a lot of people aren't going to risk a man for 7,000 extra points, except for the higher level players. So there is a little bit difference, but yeah, you're right.
No, it is true. You see it with the top players like Barrow was particularly good at this, of picking up when the B splits into those three enemies on each stage. He's very good at making sure he gets those. Like, he allows the coach to get those, and you'll see other people just let them go by or don't let them form. But again, like, you can see a very big difference between barrel board ability from a
oh yes, that is the biggest by far is the barrel board.
Yeah, there are stages in Donkey Kong which are a little bit more, I'm not going to say dead, but they're, the Pie Factory, for instance, most people are trying to just get through it without any harm. Now, we may see players in the future start taking the hammer and trying to find points.
Yeah, the top players will, like the 1.2 million players, will go after the hammer because that's, again, we're talking, surprisingly, you can actually get a lot of points by grabbing the hammer. Like, I'm talking about like 20 to 30,000 extra points, I think, just by grabbing that hammer. And so sometimes, the top players are like, hey, we need this to get a decent score. So, the top players have to grab the hammer on the Pie Factory. So
So there are differences at that point, and I'm not, and of course I'm not disputing that. Like, I'm not suggesting for a moment that the game is easy. I'm not saying that.
Oh no.
I'm just saying that the game has, like all these games, have certain limitations, and because of them being in a vacuum, like they're not like golf where you have weather conditions and newly constructed fairways, and the pin where the hole is on a green can move from week to week, by the greenkeepers. Like all of a sudden, it's higher on the green or it's lower, or the conditions of the grass and the rough. Look at all these video games don't have that. They have a random number generator. Like, things will happen a bit differently. But by and large, you know what you're in for.
Yeah.
It's more like temple bowling. It's a very set course. It's the same length, pins are set up the same way, and things might change a bit. But the good player's going to average their average. Like, they're going to do really well, and they know what they're up for. But I think that if you're right, George,
yes,
I'm not suggesting you're not. If we start to see the Donkey Kong score, you might see competition. I know Alan Starr still wants to crack 1 million. I know Matt Tecchio in Australia is trying to crack 1 million. And then whether these other people are going to try and climb into the top 10, or will we just see this latest score cause some people to drop away? Who knows? But if they do start drop away and picking up other games, I mean, I've got my own ideas where games could see more competition. I don't see more people turning to Space Invaders.
Yeah, no.
It's kind of difficult. But I do have some that I feel, and everyone's going to know, my feelings on Robotron. But what about yourself? Where do you reckon, if it does happen, where are the games that you, or tracks even?
Like, for instance, we have to go with the one that is already starting to become something in the past 6 months. There's been like a few 5 million Galaga players. So Galaga's obviously on the list. For whatever reason, Score Wars ignited something, and it brought about some really, really good Galaga players who are taking it seriously now. After that, this is one that I think is Robotron, because it's just this. It's a very addicting game. And there's like this sense of pride when you get a really really good score, and there's this energy rush, and it's sort of like it's a very very interactive game, and you have to be on top of your game in order to do very very well. It's like even if it's the only game I know of where you can not play it for 3 days, and you really have to play it a couple times, maybe a few times, to knock off that rust, and to actually because normal focus is not enough. You need hyper focus, and in order to get to that hyper focus, you sort of have to play a few games in order to get to that level. At least for me, and I see this serious, intense. I've seen people play this who are really really good, and I see the intensity that they have, and so my money would be on that as well. I think you might be right about Frogger. Maybe Miss Pac-Man? Maybe not. It's sort of a pattern game, and it looks extremely boring. And so, what I'm talking about is when you're trying to get that, when you're trying to get every dot, everything perfectly, you sort of have to group the ghost, and that takes a while, and you sort of have to do this weird dance in order to do that, and it sort of is redundant, and so maybe that wouldn't be it. Let me think. Let's see. Well, you said Defender. I could see Defender. 5-man Defender. Hold on.
Yeah, we were talking about 5-man Robotron as well, strictly.
Yeah, 5-man Robotron. I'm not talking about marathon Robotron.
I think and we can go through a few of those. Like the Robotron, for instance, is clearly a score that's been competed on. Like McAllister's score from 2017, 1.2 million, and these are infinity scores too. These are ones that, to our knowledge, Ken House would be the person to ask, but there is no kill screen in Robotron. There's marathon that just goes on and on.
Well, there's this kind of weird kill screen. It's not really a kill screen, but there's a glitch. There's a glitch in what makes Robotron kind of annoying is there is 2 different chips, and the most common CPU chip for these Robotron games, there's a glitch after a certain point, if you I think hit one of the Hulks, going with a corner shot, you're going to reset the game, and the
shot in the corner.
Yeah, and so there's been many. That's why the marathon. There's a couple reasons why the marathon record hasn't been challenged. One is that most of these chips are that you reset the game. There's a chip that does it where you don't reset the game. But besides that, a lot of those marathon scores back in the day from the early 80s are very highly questionable. And they used to do this thing where if the whole thing resets, what they would let you do is put another quarter into the game and start and basically add the 2 scores, or maybe even 3 scores. And so what you had with the old Robotron scores is either 1, they were lying, or 2, they were patchworking multiple game scores all into one because they kept on resetting the stupid game. And so all those Robotron scores, a lot of the top 5 Robotron marathon scores, not the 5-man, but the marathon, are very highly questionable. A lot of top level Robotron players today are no, these aren't legit because it'd take you 80 hours or something to do. And it's been that's where there's a lot of contention, is that even one Robotron player I think even admitted, it reset and I put another quarter in. I think that's a pretty common thing.
Yeah. The marathon one is very questionable. The idea that you could play for so long without hitting the glitch, like on my machine, which is an original Williams board.
Yeah,
I've probably half a dozen resets in games that are under 200,000. But and my best score on it's about 415, and it didn't glitch. But it seems to me if you're going to play for a very long time, unless it's on a J-Roll, these new ones, it is going to glitch.
Oh, wow. Wait, the glitch happens under 200,000?
Yeah, it's just,
Oh, wow.
It's just a condition that happens. You can just shoot an enemy into the corner. McAllister went into bigger detail about it, and him and Ken House are very good at opening these things up and looking at them. And he went into detail, and I don't recall, but it's quite peculiar. It's when you shoot an enemy. I think it's usually an enforcer in the corner, and it can just not always, but it can just cause it. And of course, the enforcers are always going into the corners, firing at you. And if you shoot back at them, you can cause this. It has something to do with throwing some, I don't know, whatever I say here is going to be confused anyway. So I don't really understand why it happens. You'd have to ask those guys.
Yeah.
But it's similar to other records like from back in the 80s. Like, of course, pole position is one of those ones that's disputed by some, and there's eyewitness accounts who say it's genuine. And I know that Ken House and McAllister were chasing that score last year, and I know McAllister was getting a score of around 66,000, I think, but he was not interested in submitting. He wants to either break it or prove that it can't be done. Now, I don't know how, because I think he, through certain things they opened up on the ROMs and that, they could demonstrate that the score's achievable, provided you remove all the cars off the track or something weird like that. But that doesn't mean, they're not saying that it's not true, they're just trying to figure out whether it can. But recently, a score has been submitted to pole position. It was just this year. It was 2019, and that's into a third position. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but Yamnitz, I think, Daniel Paul Yamnitz.
Yeah.
Scored 6,710. Now, this is like the pole position at that point. It's very similar to the long jump world record. It has a finite amount, whereas there are games like the Robotron 5-man, like you're saying, it could go on forever. And this is where we really get into the evaluative position of the games, is the difference in gameplay here. And this is for me, and this is a personal opinion, so, I mean, I may draw negative attention for this if anyone should listen to this, but I think Robotron, and I think Sinistar would be another one, but it's kind of like become the Voldemort of video arcade games. No one ever seems to mention it because it's just so bloody hard. But Robotron is for fear of what might happen, but Robotron is a game that really does have very little pattern behaviour. You know you're going to start in the middle. The random generator of that, it must be at go, like how it generates, it can really work for and against you, but not in a way that the variables are going to just throw you so much luck that it's a walkthrough. It's just never a walkthrough on Robotron. I think it's 40 ways that vary. The bonus stages aren't really bonuses. There's points to be made, but it's more difficult to keep those points than just reduce the levels. And the point of being good at the game, just by shooting enemies, don't give you the points. You have to save, Mummy, Daddy, and Mikey. Like, it really forces you to go into it. Like, it's an elliptical game. You have to do one thing to save points and avoid other things to keep things available. Anyway, people know Robotron anyway, but I think that its gameplay is pure. The most pure of the early arcade games.
Yeah, I agree. I that's the cool thing about it, is there's obviously there's like a system that you can use, like, for instance, look for a way out and then start going in a circle. Look for the what do you call it, I think they're called the enforcers, the one that spit out the little the X's or the T's or whatever you want to call them. And you want to kill those first, except for, I think, you want one to live for, I think, because that way you can gather a whole bunch of 5,000 point men by leaving one of the enforcers left, because the other ones, the walkers, they go too quick, and eventually they'll catch you, but the enforcer doesn't, and so. So there is a method, there's a system, but there is no pattern, not in the least. And you have to keep, I think it's because of that it is more pure, because there isn't like some cheap trick that you can use. I like that. I like the fact that it's basically pure skill. It's not some stupid, if you get a high score, it's skill. It's not, there is no, no cheap trick or even luck for that matter. If you get like 800,000 on Robotron 5-man, yeah, you're good. You're really good. Even if you had a lucky game, you're really good.
Yeah, like to roll games like a decent every solid Gallagher player's rolled the score. If you played it on, you're going to roll as factory settings of that game. Even on rank D, you're going to roll 1,000,000 points without losing a man. Like double your ships up and like Laidlaw's 4,000,000 point run, without losing a man. And then recently, Dorrington did a 4,000,000 point run on his last 2 men. I think inside one of Armando's games in the marathon games, I think he may have done it. It may have been like a 5 minute.
Well, he had a video where he claimed. Well, I believe him because he's got the record, but he had a video where he stopped at 6 million, and he started letting all his men die, and I think it added up to whatever it is, 18, 17 men, and he didn't die once. So he just decided to stop at 6 million because his hands were starting to hurt, because if you you really you press the button a lot in Galaga, just boom, 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 boom. And you keep on doing that for, so many times. Some people with bad hands, it's going to hurt. So.
Well, he has bad wrists, like he actually has bad wrists, not
yeah.
in the game, other things. But the point being is that it shows that the game is partially broken, that you can actually find such a rhythm in the game. You can run for, like in the case of Laidlaws, for more than 2 hours without losing a man. You aren't going to run 15 minutes in Robotron without losing a man.
No.
It's just not. Now that's on 5 minutes. Now, but we have so little data again. Like we have, when we look at the Robotron, the fifth score of 2016, so that's pretty close. That's recent at 833,000. Then we've got McAllister 1.2 million. But again, how different is 833,000 to 1.2 million? Like, they certainly are different, but how different are they? Like, if we had more data, like you're saying with Donkey Kong, we could get a much more accurate assessment.
Yeah.
And if we had more people playing it, like if we had the top Donkey Kong players, if it was possible that their skill set could transfer to Robotron, what sort of scores would we be seeing?
Yeah, I think there are certain players that would, if they focused on it, would be kind of interesting. Because I don't know of anyone that plays or streams Robotron like 2-3 hours a day. I would just like to see someone do that for a year straight. And one of the problems with Robotron is the joystick setup. You have 2 stick joysticks. So in order to play Robotron correctly, you sort of have to have the arcade machine, or you have to have like a special joystick that costs like freaking $150, $175 to have. So you don't have that. So that's why that's the really interesting thing, is it doesn't really, people can get good scores with keyboard or with a Sega, what was it, a PlayStation joystick and a normal joystick. I've seen that done, but I've never seen anyone. Yeah, I think it holds the game back. That's one problem with Robotron, is that 2-stick setup is so not. It's very uncommon. So yeah. That's why.
I know you're saying, like it's if you've got a multi-cab, you've got for that setup, it becomes difficult. But that's true of all Defender games. Like the problem with Robotron, now that I have a cab, is the screen is horizontal to begin with, and like most Williams games are, it's horizontal. So that has to be corrected. Then you have to have these 2 joysticks in there. And imagine if you set up a cabinet for a Defender or Stargate. Like Stargate has an extra button than Defender, and it's a 2-way joystick. So it's all, you really need a dedicated cab, like to set up Robotron. Or if you've got a J-Rock, you can have pretty much every Williams game on there set up to play.
But you still need those 2 joysticks, which again, you're not. So it's kind of hard when you need the 2 joysticks. I mean, some main game cabs have that, but some don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're getting off the point of it. Yeah, that's a difficult. That's a sort of fault. But yeah, it's not as accessible is the real point there. Just like a trackball, like for Missile Command, you could say that has limited competition. Missile Command has in Marvel Madness and Centipede, just because they're not as common as a joystick cabinet, or Tempest, for instance, with its dial. Things like that are becoming. They're just not as easily.
To get
You can, converting a Space Invaders into a Galaxian into a Galaga is really no effort at all.
Yeah, exactly. That which is really cool.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, it would be interesting to have a few players, like if they had Galaga, how players play it every day. I think with Donkey Kong, I'd like to see that with like Robotron, just someone that plays it 3 hours a day for like a year or two straight. I'd like to see what would happen. Like if you had like a few people do that, would these is it inborn natural ability, and no amount of time's gonna help you get
But
that
I
much
think,
better?
I think that the Robotron one, it's one game in particular because of it's so short. Like McAllister scores about 15 minutes of gameplay, I think. It's roughly that. If it may be a few minutes more, maybe a few minutes less. In arcade terms, that's nothing. That's such a small amount of time.
Yeah.
That's basically the average Fortnite game, from what I understand. It's not. It's not. And same with StarCraft. It's around that 15-minute time. It's a good duration for a spectator, but it's a good opportunity to retest another game. Like a lot of